if we try to do we try to pre-tape the ending here. So why don't you give the outro a go?
You want to start right now? Outro?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it.
All right, this is going to be. We've never done it before. This will be tough. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, and that's tomorrow. And that is. It.
Wait, hold on. I didn't get you. I have to do it on my count.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So 3, 2, 1.
And that's tomorrow. And that is it for us today at Nothing Worthwhile. I don't know whatever it is. It's not right on the teleprompter. I don't know what it is. No, I've never seen that.
No, there it is. It's we're going to do Jefferson Starship. Yeah.
But I can't read it. There's no words on it.
All right. Ready? Let's do it again. Wait, you said this. All right. Let's just do it again. 3, 2, 1.
There are no words there, Groo, to play us out. What does that mean, to play us out?
It's Jefferson Starship. Jefferson Starship's going to do. It's a video. It's a Jefferson Starship video.
What is?
For the end of the show, the outro.
I don't know what that means, to play us out. What does that mean? To end the show?
Yeah. To end, like we do every week.
All right, go.
All right. Okay. You in 5, 4, 3, 2.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for.
And wait, and again. 5, 4. I didn't press the right button. 5, 4, 3, 2.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with. No, I can't do it. I can't do it.
All right. Okay. All right. Listen.
All right. Fine. We'll do it live. We'll do it live.
No, I mean, all right, but we're not a live. All right. Okay.
No. We'll do it live. Fuck it. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. The fucking thing sucks.
Oh, all right. In 5, 4, 3, 2.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. I'm Evan Moody. Thanks again for listening to Nothing Worthwhile. We'll leave you with Jefferson Starship, a cut off their new album. Take it away.
All right, that was good.
Okay, great.
That was good. Are you happy with that?
Yeah. Can we go to the Chris Farley package?
Hi, Kim. I wanted you to have these flowers because it's the Valentine's show.
Oh, how sweet. Come in.
Really? Because I don't want Alec to get mad at me.
Oh, don't worry about it. Come on. Have a seat.
It's really cool that you're hosting this week. You're probably missing some big Hollywood Valentine party or something.
No, I don't really go to a lot of parties, Chris. I mean, I'd rather stay home and read a book or watch football.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I do that. Well, watch football. What's your favorite team?
The Bears.
That's awesome. We do a sketch called The Bears. We all sit around, going, The Bears.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Oh, idiot!
No, it's...
Of course, it's stupid.
No, it's okay, Chris, it's okay. But I do love the Bears. I mean, my old boyfriend was from Chicago.
I bet he was like a movie star or celebrity or something.
Well, he was pretty well known. Roger Ebert.
You went out with him?
For a while. And then I met Paul Prudhomme, the Cajun chef.
Really?
Yeah, but I dumped him the second I met John Banner from Hogan's Heroes.
Sergeant Schultz, the guy who said, I know nothing?
Yes.
and he, remember when he said he'd go
No.
he'd go...
Please don't, Chris. Don't. It still hurts. I was really in love with him.
I'm sorry, Kim. It's so stupid.
No, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. After John, I dated Rerun from What's Happening.
Hang on a second. You dated Rerun?
Yeah.
So you basically went out with fat guys on TV.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, does that mean, like, if you hadn't married Alec Baldwin, that you might have gone out with me?
Sure, Chris.
Awesome. And, like, we could have, like, gone to, like, Bears games or whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
Then, like, maybe eventually, you know, like, after a while or something, like, we could, I don't know, like, make out or something.
Well, yeah. But I don't know where you're going with all this because I'm married, Chris. And I can't even imagine myself kissing someone except Alec. I mean, he's my husband.
Stupid moron! God, I'm such an idiot. What was I thinking? Well, of course you...
Chris, I hate to see you like this. Listen, I've got some good news for you.
What?
In The Getaway, I do 2 nude scenes.
Really?
Yeah.
God, that is awesome. That is unbelievable.
Happy Valentine's Day, Chris.
Thanks, Kim. Happy Valentine's Day.
Sir, do you realize that you are not drinking regular coffee, but Colombian decaffeinated coffee crystals?
What?
I said you're drinking Colombian decaf coffee crystals.
What? You son of a bitch. You no good damn son of a bitch. You lied to me. You lied to me. You told me this was like just you.
And now live from Shreveport, Louisiana via international satellite hookup, the victim of that hidden camera commercial, Michael Huff. Mr. Huff, how do you feel about your experience on hidden camera?
Angry.
Thank you. And thank you from Swedish television. Good night.
But before I decide to keep my business with your place, I'd have to come by and have a look at your new operation.
Hey, I tell you what. You can take a good look at a butcher's ass by sticking your head up there, but wouldn't you rather take his word for it?
What? I'm failing to make the connection here, son.
No, I mean, you can get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a butcher's ass, but then, no, it's got to be your bull.
Wow.
Here's the deal. If I want you...
You have derailed.
Shut up, Richard.
Boy, I'm really at a loss for words here.
Forget it, I quit. I can't do this anymore, man. My head's about to explode. My whole life sucks. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. My dad just died. We just killed Bambi. I'm out here getting my ass kicked, and every time I drive down the road, I want to jerk the wheel into a goddamn bridge abutment.
We'll be in touch.
You gotta fight for your right to vote! That's one small step for man, one giant. I have a dream! Power to the people! If I'd have the chance right now, I'd like to express it to everyone. I want to see the different side of Chris.
Really, a different...
Yeah, would you like to see that? Thanks for giving me this chance.
Sure, Chris, a different side of Chris Farley. Come on, Chris. We're behind you. Come on.
I'm a clown, but I cry. I'll make you laugh, then dry my eye. Yes, I cry, though I'm a clown. I'll cheer you up, but I'll be down. I have a weight problem. It makes me sad, which is the opposite of glad. There's no one quite as sad as me, though I make you go. Hee hee. Yes, you go ha ha ha. Hoo hoo hoo. But I'm not as happy as you. You think I'm good, but I eat too much food. You know what, Conan? I'm working on that food. You know, I'm not sure. You know, it's kind of a work in progress, but
It's fine. It's fine.
okay. Thanks, fellas. But if it makes you think I'm great, I'll take a fall or flatulate. Yes, I'm a clown, but I cry. I'm a clown, but I
Hey, did we edit that outro out? That's so embarrassing. I can't believe you left that in there, Groo.
I didn't leave it in there. It's out.
Well,
no, I swear to God, I swear, I would never embarrass you like that.
Well, in any event, it is America's #1 bi-coastal podcast featuring two annoying Jews. We are Nothing Worthwhile. On the West Coast, in the pleasantly warm city of Phoenix, Arizona, your host and moderator, Evan Moody. On the East Coast, again, in the humid, dank, wet, and I'm not referring to Groo's bathroom, in the great city of Coral Springs, Florida, Andrew Gruthius, how the hell are you, my friend?
I would not know if it's hot outside. I haven't been outside in 3 weeks. I'm assuming it's nice.
That can't be true.
No,
3
it's
weeks?
not true. No. But it feels true. Let's put it that way.
I mean, Let me ask, what do you go outside for? I mean, have you gone to the grocery store?
Yes, I've gone to the grocery store. I had to go to the bank once to solve a problem.
Oh boy. Uh-oh.
I had to
bankruptcy.
Well, that's been for years.
Overdraft.
That's been for years. We try to get together with my parents once a week. Just usually we'll go to Steven's house but we'll sit outside, like literally in front of the garage, at least 10 feet apart, every one of us, just to see each other. And yesterday we had my dad's 80th birthday, so we went up there and sort of did the same thing with them. But it's very bittersweet doing that because it's just, by sitting there and looking at each other and you realize what we're in. And I'm jealous actually of the people who live with people, because as you know, people who need people are the luckiest people.
I just feel like I could see you with a family outing with like the tape measure, like 6 feet. Yeah. So your mom, you stay here on this red X. Dad, you're over here on this black X. Steven, go over here in this yellow circle.
It's almost like you'd be surprised.
I feel like it's elementary school, like PE class. Like get on your square.
Yeah, it's not far off, and you'd be surprised because I'm the one who's reminding everybody when we're there. Like my mom was sort of getting too close, and I was like, Mom, you got to stay over there. It's like, and I do that myself.
I do that myself with my mom, but that nothing to do with COVID-19. I just go, please, 6 feet, so we don't kill each other.
Yeah, and she's been trying to kill you for years, so I don't.
Yes,
but we all love Cheryl Moody.
I just spoke to her by FaceTime a little bit earlier before this call, so we had a chance. My dad finally came over. It was his birthday in early May, so we brought in some food, and it was early April. Right.
So you're confident in getting together with your dad?
It was to my dad's comfortability, meaning he didn't feel comfortable up until this point. For all of our listeners, the stay-at-home order in Arizona has been extended to May 15th, with some additional businesses being allowed to open. And most likely May 15th, some kind of phase-in. So my dad finally, I said, Dad, I got your birthday gift. He said, after almost a full month, I'm comfortable to come over. We had the masks ready to go, but we ate and we just hung out, sat on the couch, reminisced, and off he went. Gave him his gift, and we brought in some steaks. And
now, do you trust these? Like the state, your state saying it's okay to, when they lift, like how can you put a date on when we're going to lift the thing?
Okay, so
that's what I don't understand.
That's a great question, and I don't want to get into a large political rant because we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. But I don't really trust much of what state, local, and federal government tells us. But this is what I do say to Marie and to my family. We assume risk every time we walk out the door, whether it's getting hit by a car, whether it's other diseases. So, it's to everybody's comfortability. I mean, I do follow what the state guidelines are and what they're asking us to do. And so do I trust it? I mean, no, I understand what you're saying. I mean, is May 16th going to be the day where there's no virus in the air? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But people have businesses. My girlfriend is a small business owner. They're itching to get back. They can only go so long without, getting full pay, and she has people on her payroll. So I am sensitive to that. Look, we're lucky. We're educators. We have a guaranteed paycheck coming in 2 weeks, no matter how large or how small it is. So we have a little bit of flexibility, but there's a lot of people that want to get back to work and would be willing to assume that risk. But I understand it completely what you're saying. I understand completely what you're saying.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say is the biggest problem for me is that every state seems to have a different opinion, and when that happens, how can you trust anybody? We're a country. We're not a bunch of, I know we have, quote-unquote state/provinces, but we're not, our federal government is basically saying, do what we tell you, but governors, it's up to you. Like what?
Actually,
that's
no.
What?
I mean, first of all, the states have the ultimate control. I mean, we've seen that already. The president did try to say, "Hey, I want to reopen," but he acquiesced to the states because the states truly have the power. But what I would say to you is, why would a state, let's say with Wyoming, that has one verifiable COVID-19 death, why should they remain closed like California or New York? Because they have thousands. Why can't Wyoming reopen and have some semblance of life if their situation is somewhat easily manageable?
It's a great question. And my only answer, and I don't know if it's plausible, but my only answer would be we were all like that at one point. When New York started their big wave, Florida was in the clear. And now all of a sudden, and so it's been like a domino effect. So we don't know what's going where. And Wyoming, although in your defense, Wyoming is much closer to Washington, where all this kind of started, than...
True. I was only using Wyoming per se as an example.
No, but it's a good example because you're right, and they're in that quadrant over there where... my opinion is, if they were going to get hit hard, it would have been by now. So, but that's my own logic, not based on scientific fact. So I have no, so let's all drink Clorox.
Okay, I'm going to toast. I have my cup of diluted Clorox right here. Hold on one second.
And we can continue talking about a dead comedian.
Minty fresh. All right, well, it was. I'm glad everything's doing as best as it can be, and you're looking great. So, Groo, let's get before we get to today's topic.
Now it seems like your eyesight is going. Something's wrong with you. You just said I was looking great.
Come on, you got that beautiful orange, very colorful shirt. Usually, that's contrasted these stark blacks and grays that we like to wear.
Why are you bringing me back to 8th grade now?
Yep. Let's scale back. Speaking of 8th grade, to our last podcast, it was Bon Jovi, "Slippery When Wet." We talked about the one that kicked it all off for the Bon Jovi machine. "Slippery When Wet" had 3 major music players involved in the production of the album. We talked about Bob Rock as the mixer, Bruce Fairbairn as the producer, and Desmond Child as the songwriting collaborator. We discussed our thoughts on each of the songs on the album, track by track. We discussed the truly massive commercial success of the album, and of course wrapped up with mixed at best commercial reviews of "Slippery When Wet." Andrew, I enjoyed going back into the Nothing Worthwhile time machine to reflect on this one. Final thoughts from last 2 weeks ago, our podcast, Bon Jovi, "Slippery When Wet."
I listened to it over once, and I realized that I am a fan. As much as I love that album, I'm a fan of more recent Bon Jovi than I am of that.
Well, when you say more recent Bon Jovi, what albums, if you can, referring to? Like Crush?
Crush, and even Bounce, and even there are songs on there that just do more for me than anything on "Slippery When Wet," like I talked about at the end of last week's podcast. But when I was listening to it, I found myself continuously drifting away from "Slippery When Wet" and more towards more recent things. So I was surprised to hear that about myself. So, and I think that's a good thing when a band can do that. When they can continue to put out quality material over their career as they get older. Not many bands can do that. Everybody always wants them, go play this from 1984, play this instead of, so I think Bon Jovi has transcended the generations, which I think is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that. Bounce, I do like some of the stuff on it. Felt like it was a little bit of a miss, but some of the newer stuff I really love. These Days is definitely a podcast that I'd love to mine with you, because that was the first album where Bon Jovi openly admitted to going in a little bit of a different direction. I remember Richie Sambora saying on MTV, "We're not going Pink Floyd on you, but we're going to try a little bit more of an adult approach." I even love New Jersey. I think that's a fascinating album to talk about, because that was the last, quote unquote, of their hair metal, which I'm not even sure it's so hair metal-y, but it was the last of that look and that feel. But I agree with you. Bon Jovi, they're a machine. This House Is Not For Sale is just, I still listen. I got the live track on Apple Music. When I run and work out, I love listening to their stuff. So
same with me. When I'm lying on the couch eating Cheetos, I love listening to Just Older.
Well, those 14 songs that you discussed, I downloaded most of them and listened back. And like Blood on Blood, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
From Arena Rock, it's good stuff.
She turned us into men.
Yeah, COVID-19 played yet again another role with our topic of Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi announced that their Bon Jovi 2020 tour was officially canceled, and refunds would be going out to all paying customers. We, of course, here at Nothing Worthwhile will be offering no such money refunds, as we are money-sucking whores. So, but anyway, Bon Jovi 2020 out.
Yeah, and it's a shame, because I would have gone to that, the double bill with him. Well, it wasn't a double bill. It was Bryan Adams opening. We talked about this.
Yes.
It was Bryan Adams opening, and I would have seen to see both those acts in one night would have been a great time. It would have even been better if I didn't go by myself, which I definitely probably would have.
Listen, if you said to me, "Moody, I got you a ticket," I'd probably fly down for the show. So.
I would count on that, because otherwise people would be looking at me the whole time like, is this guy going to shoot us?
We talked about real briefly, but your thoughts. Most people are saying, most television outlets are saying, for major concerts, the fall of 2021. That's still an awful long time away, and most of our guys are older. Do you think we'll have another go around at seeing Bruce, Billy? We talked about off the air Phil Collins with Genesis. You think or is this going to put a kibosh on the last remaining classic rock generation?
It's really up to us if we, without getting too deep politically, the biggest problem with this whole thing is that as a country we can't agree on anything. We've got two sides, and when you have two sides going at it, one side has this opinion, one side has the other opinion. You know what? Actually, I'm going to put it in an analogy.
Yeah, but what is that? Here's the thing.
No, I'm going to tell you. Wait.
Most news outlets say major concerts you may not see to the fall.
Forget what they say. I'm talking about logically now. I don't care what anybody says anymore. Logically, can I imagine? Well, wait, because what this channel says completely contradicts what that channel says. That's the part of the problem. So I'm thinking logically now, and if this thing is still out there and the numbers are real, how the hell can we expect to be in a building with 25,000 people sitting on top of each other watching a concert? I can't imagine it right now, but the reason behind it is that people are doing what they want, not what they need to do. Or wait a minute, let me back that up a little bit. They're doing what they need to do, whether it's healthy for them or not. That's what I'm. That's but the reason is because of the mixed signals. The worst thing that has happened to us, as far as I'm concerned, is 3 words: we don't know. And when we don't know, that's the worst situation to be in. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Look, I heard yesterday that a couple of counties in Florida are rolling out a whole new return to school thing that's going to start in mid-July. And I also heard that 25% of teachers are going to be fired because they don't have them. They don't have. So I don't even know if I'm going to have a job in 6 weeks or 7 weeks. So we don't know anything, and that's why. And that's the biggest problem is that if you go on social media or you go on TV, you're going to see nothing but two sides literally trying to kill each other with what they perceive as facts. And the analogy I was going to use is one that you will appreciate. It's the Alien versus Predator tagline. Whoever wins, we lose. That's the way I see it. With these two sides just trying to get a political leg up over the other one. I don't give a shit which side. Just somebody get their heads out of their asses and tell us what we need to do, and we'll fucking do it. But enough of this shit where it's like, but this girl says that somebody touched her ass in 1974. That's not our fucking problem right now.
Hold on now. Wait a second. You're taking this into a whole political agenda. I simply asked you about concerts in 2021. Now, if there were guidelines presented, and I said to you off the air, it's all about assuming risk. Would you, if you wore a mask, would you go to Madison Square Garden or whatever it is to see Billy Joel? I'm saying I would.
Oh, I misread the question.
Wait.
All right, wait.
And by the way, since you love to bring it into a political realm, because I secretly feel you want to do a political podcast because you like to put little comments on Facebook and meant to stir up discussion, which really isn't going to be productive because people just argue on Facebook anyway. But hold on. You mentioned about a girl who claimed about she had her ass grabbed in 1974. My whole position on this is not whether or not that person is guilty or not, but what bothers me is the media's portrayal of prior allegations and excoriated people in the media. I mean, if you want to reference Kavanaugh, the guy who was the Supreme Court, and I mean 700 articles within a 48-hour time frame, and women, Me Too, saying an allegation's an allegation no matter what, and Alyssa Milano, and then when all of a sudden one of their guys has an allegation, now they're saying due process, wait a second, hands off, wait a second, he's a great guy. I'm not saying if this gentleman is guilty or not. I don't know that, nor would I know Kavanaugh, Trump, or I don't know that to be a fact. But what bothers me about it is the mainstream media's, they couldn't wait to string this guy up, but now their favorite is being accused, and all of a sudden it's a double standard. It's really hypocritical, and I hate hypocrisy. And
okay, the interesting thing here, and this will be the last thing I say, is that we both agree 100%. We're arguing about something that we agree on. I wasn't specifically referring to what's going on right now with Biden's accuser. I said the same thing when the impeachment thing was happening. I said, what good is this doing us? Nothing. He's not going to be impeached. They're going to do, and we're going to be the same off as we were before. What the hell are we doing? And what happened? And even with all the allegations against the president. Well, guess what? We voted for him anyway. So, I mean, we as in a country. So, why are we trying to backtrack? When we have a big, well, I'm going to get to the answer to your question, but I got to get this out. We have a virus that's hurting people right now, left and right, and this is what we're worried about. The hypocrisy is on both sides because it's on both sides. The media is doing what they do, what they've always done. I don't know why we're so surprised. But my answer to your question is...
Hold on. Are you saying, though, because of COVID-19, that's the truly important piece? They shouldn't be focusing in on this allegation?
Not right now. I don't want to hear it right now. I didn't want to hear the... just like when...
I'm just fascinated.
Just like when CNN goes after Trump for something he did that's got nothing to do with COVID-19. Be like, why do you care about that now? It's the same thing. Both sides. Like, keep your eye on the ball.
All right. Well, you've said a lot. What I do agree with you is one thing. when you watch the news, you have to understand that certain news outlets see it as a filter. So when you're watching CNN, for example, or MSNBC, they're obviously a very left-leaning Democratic. So you have to understand that. When you watch Fox News, you have to understand that that's in a very conservative Republican filter. And I did see where somebody said something, and I agreed with it. You know, when you watch news now, it's not about the acquisition of information and facts. It's about an affirmation of your personal philosophies. And I do agree with that. When we watch the news now, depending on what network we watch, it's really an affirmation of what we truly believe inside of our hearts. It's like, oh, yeah, he stinks. Or, yeah, we got to go get him. Or, yeah, they're screwing us out of. It's really an affirmation. You know, back when we were kids, news was very much more straight down the line and about a presentation of facts. And the only time really you got much on opinion was when the newspapers had their op-ed pieces. That was really the only, you know, now everything is really an opinion based. It's very, very slanted. And we spent way too much time. But my last question back to you is this, though. 2021, fall of 2021, if there's guidelines, would you assume the risk of going to a concert? That was really my only question.
Yes. I misread the question. I thought you were no. I thought you were asking me if I thought they were going to be concerts, and my answer was going to be no, because they're not doing anything. Like, they just announced that a bunch of summer camps are closing for the summer, even though we're still a month and a half away from when they might open. So things could change. Things are, you know, like, have a little. I know I sound like very maudlin, but have a little hope. Have a little hope.
You're being very both ways. I mean, you're talking
about...
Yeah,
what did I just say the problem is? The problem is that we're all both ways because we don't fucking know. Because no one wants to tell us the truth. But I'm going to get back.
You're making a comment about summer camp because you work at a summer camp and you very much want to have that experience.
Right, but that's but wait a second. It's not just that. Hold on.
Mad about
Evan,
some local business owner who wants to open up.
Evan, it's not just that. It's not just that. That is currently trending. That happened yesterday. Okay, if it happened 2 weeks ago, we wouldn't be talking about it. But it happened yesterday, and it was very surprising to me that they would make such a preemptive announcement when they know, and on the same day that announcement is coming in, they're starting with announcements. They're going to bring in ELL and ESOL kids early in Florida in mid-July. They might bring teachers back in early. So, of course, we're wondering, well, are we going to get paid double? Because, you know, the money that we make over the summer is money that's been taken out of our paycheck all year long. So, you know, and there are so many questions and no answers, and everybody in the media keeps coming on TV saying that they've got the answers. So if everybody's got the answers and the answers are completely different, how the hell do the people who are truly affected by this, meaning the citizens of the United States, how are they supposed to react? Exactly the way they are. So the answer to your question is, if there are concerts, I'm going to be there. I will go.
And that was Firing Line with Andrew Gruthius.
With Andrew F. Buckley for Firing Line.
I mean, Lord, get on your high horse.
What do you think about this administration?
Let me tell you something. I appreciate your passion, and I love that. But blah, 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 blah. All right, let's get to this week's topic.
If George Carlin were alive today.
He is a nothing worthwhile legend. It is Chris Farley. Christopher Farley was born February 15th, 1964 in Madison, Wisconsin.
That was a great segue.
His father, Thomas John Farley Sr., owned an oil company. His mother, Mary Ann, was a homemaker. Chris had 4 siblings, Tom Jr., Kevin, John, and Barbara. Farley family is that of Irish descent, and they are Catholics. Farley attended Catholic schools in his hometown. Interesting enough, Groo, many of Chris Farley's summers were spent as a camper and counselor at the Red Arrow Camp near Minocqua, Wisconsin. He graduated from Marquette University in 1986 with a double major in communications and theater, so clearly he's no dummy. At Marquette, he played rugby and discovered the love of comedy. After college, he worked with his father at the Scotch Oil Company in Madison, perhaps some inspiration for his future movie Tommy Boy. He first learned the art of improv comedy at the Arc Improv Theater in Madison. He attended Chicago's Second City Theater, starting the same day as Stephen Colbert, initially as part of Second City's touring group. He was promoted to the Second City main stage in 1989. Groo, we know somewhat of Second City Theater. Second City is an improvisational comedy enterprise, and historically the first ongoing improv theater troupe to be based in Chicago, with training programs in live theater in Toronto and in L.A. Second City Theater opened December 16, 1959, and has since become one of the most influential and prolific comedy theaters in the world. Groo's Second City has produced television programs in both Canada and the U.S., most notably SCTV. It's been a notable starting point for comedians, award-winning actors, directors, and others in show business. Let me give you a who's who, and I'll get your comments afterwards. Your guy Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, John Candy, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, one of my favorites, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Mike Myers, Steve Carell, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Stephen Colbert, and many others. SCTV, the Farley got his start. Quite an impressive list.
Well, SCTV, the way I thought it was, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, the Second City was like a comedy troupe, and I think Belushi and Chevy Chase were part of that too, and they kind of went in two different directions. The Canadian ones went and produced SCTV, and the American ones, with the exception of Aykroyd, went to Saturday Night Live. That's what it seemed
sounds
like.
It sounds almost like WCW and NWO.
Yeah, exactly, NWO,
right.
Red and Black.
Maybe
But that's a talent list that cannot be matched. The Second City.
Well, you mentioned SCTV, which was a Canadian television sketch comedy show. I do have some notes. The basic premise of SCTV was based on a television station in the fictional city of Melonville. I remember seeing some of it as a kid. Rather than broadcast usual TV rerun fare, the business run by greedy Guy Caballero, Joe Flaherty, who sat in a wheelchair only for respect, operated a bizarre and humorously incompetent range of cheap local programming. The range included the soap opera The Days of the Week, game shows such as Shoot at the Stars, in which celebrities are shot at in similar fashion to targets in a shooting gallery. Play It Again, Bob, in which Woody Allen, played by Rick Moranis, attempts to entice Bob Hope, played by Dave Thomas, to star in his next film. John Candy as the vain, bloated television star Johnny LaRue. I do remember some Johnny LaRue.
Nathan Thurm, Martin Short, Nathan Thurm.
Well, Andrea Martin, flamboyant leopard skin-clad television manager, Miss Edith Prickley. Catherine O'Hara's alcoholic, narcissistic former leading lady Lola Heatherton, who she's done a million times, including Schitt's Creek is a spinoff of that. And of course, as you mentioned, Martin Short also originated his dorky Ed Grimley character here, which he later brought to Saturday Night Live. SCTV was sort of thought in the States as a distant relative to Saturday Night Live. But Groo, Second City, and SCTV certainly had their fair share of impressive members of the troupe who went on to a lot of future success here in the United States.
Yeah, the questions are which ones didn't. And I guess if they didn't, we wouldn't know their names. So it doesn't really, But I've always seen SCTV as sort of a American version of Monty Python. Saturday Night Live. Right. Saturday Night Live is more. Their sketches are more narrative based. SCTV was literally just a lot of these little meaningless vignettes just like a quick 30-second clip of Mr. Rogers boxing and beating the shit out of somebody and then moving on to the next thing. It seemed very like Monty Python-esque there, but it's great stuff. You could find it on YouTube. I actually have a couple of DVDs, not surprisingly, from SCTV. But
really?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because it's great stuff.
If and when you watch them, even today, do you still enjoy the comedy?
Yes, it's even dated. You know me. Even the most dated comedy is still funny, because if I get it, it wouldn't be funny to today's audiences because they don't get it. Because comedy to them is, I always go back to like the Van Wilder style of comedy. Oh my God, there's a big load of semen in a chocolate eclair. That's funny.
I got to admit, I'm laughing on the Van Wilder stuff. I mean, I did see Van Wilder, and it's mildly amusing. No,
mildly. But these guys, their comedy was based in reality and truth, and that's what made it so funny.
I also think they got a lot of reps with Second City, and I think reps. I'm also a believer of practice. In the book Outliers, I mean, I think guys like Farley, all these great improv, Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, they had so many reps in front of a live audience, and it's really like everything else, it's honing your craft.
Yeah, and now the reps come on YouTube and TikTok, and somebody tells a funny joke on TikTok, the next week they're hosting Saturday Night Live. I mean, that's kind of the way it is. But in this generation, everything moves at lightning speed, and for better or worse, there are great benefits to that for people like you and me, but there's also a nostalgic feeling for us for the old days where where laughs had to be earned instead of given. And that's, to me, that's the biggest difference. Can a young audience
do you wake up and go, God, I wish it was 1985 all over again?
I usually say 1986.
See my smile. I'm
yes,
that was a good year.
But I may or may not have been at around 4 a.m. last night watching 1986 Mets full games on YouTube.
That was one of my low points. All right, let's go back to Chris Farley along with Chris Rock.
We're an hour in. We should probably start talking about
come
Farley.
on, let's go. Hey, we had some good conversation. Some new Saturday Night Live cast members announced in early 1990. On SNL, Farley was introduced with fellow cast members. Listen to this group: Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, Tim Meadows, Rob Schneider, and David Spade, among others. This group came to be known as the Bad Boys of SNL. That's a pretty impressive list. All right, let's get to Chris Farley, popular character.
Well, actually, let me stop you there for a second. No, I think it's worth talking about.
Go ahead.
That group that came in, I remember the announcement. Do you?
I mean, I don't remember it live. I could tell you that.
I don't remember it live, but I remember them making the announcement and showing the people who were coming in. And I remember, of all the names you mentioned, I remember looking at 2 of them, and I said, yes, those guys are good. They're going to be the breakouts.
Who?
Any guess? Would you want to guess?
I'm going to guess. I'll say, not knowing the guys, I would say Sandler and Spade, I believe, had some, and maybe Rock, because I know Sandler did some funny stuff on MTV. Mm-hmm. He hosted, I think, Remote Control, or he was a featured player on Remote Control. And I want to say Spade or Rock may have had some young comedian stuff on HBO. So I'll give you mentioned 2, I'll give you those 3.
Yeah, well, you got a 2 out of 3. Sandler, I had no idea who he was. I had no idea who Meadows was. But Chris Rock, I knew as a very funny stand-up. He had opened for Eddie Murphy, I think, on a couple venues. And he had like an HBO one-night stand, one of those specials, and so did Spade. Spade and Rock had some television success that I was aware of at the time. So I was looking at those 2 and being like, oh, okay, here we go. We're bringing in some established talent here. And then I saw Chris Farley, and I'm like, All right, they're looking for another Belushi. Like that's what I thought when I saw him. Just like when we saw Horatio Sands. Oh, they're looking for a new Farley. You know, every fat guy that comes in is like the next this guy. So that's what I thought when I saw Farley for the first time. Not on the show, but when they made the announcement.
All right, let's keep it moving. Popular characters played by Farley included. Let's discuss Matt Foley, the over-the-top motivational speaker who constantly reminded other characters that he was living in a van down by the river. The character was created, interestingly enough, by Better Call Saul player Bob Odenkirk.
Yep, I did know that.
When he and Farley were performers at Second City, basically Farley based the character on his local Catholic priest, who was actually, I believe, named Matt Foley, and Farley decided that he actually wanted to keep the name. Some of the mannerisms of the Matt Foley character were a combination of positions Chris Farley noticed his rugby teammates took on the field, coupled with his high school football coach's habit of squatting down when giving pep talks, and the voice his father used when he was angry. In the first sketch as Matt Foley, he stumbled and broke a coffee table. That scene was not in the script. Farley had momentarily lost his balance. However, it resulted in such an uproarious response that future Farley sketches included similar actions. So Matt Foley appeared in 8 Saturday Night Live sketches, Groo. Each sketch typically started with Foley brought in to a specific situation by someone to speak to a group. And in addition to his disheveled, overweight, and unstylish appearance, he exhibits poor social skills, frequently loses his temper, disparages and insults his audience, wallows in cynicism and self-pity, and ultimately presents a negative motivational message. Foley's trademark line is warning his audiences that they could end up like himself, being 35 years old, eating a steady diet of government cheese, thrice divorced, and living in a van down by the river. In most sketches, whenever a member of the audience announced a personal accomplishment, Foley responded with mockery or belligerence. Well,
Lottie frickin' da.
Or whoop-dee
frickin' do.
Sketches usually featured Farley's penchant for physical comedy, such as the over-caffeinated Foley gesticulating wildly and leaping around, often breaking furniture.
The poor bastard.
We love this one. In the character's debut, David Spade and Christina Applegate, who were playing teens supposedly in need of Foley's help, were visibly trying to stifle their laughter. David Spade, in particular, spent most of the sketch with his hand covering his face. In the sketch, Foley ended up falling on the table in front of him, crushing it. Again, the bit was so popular that Farley turned it into one of his best-known routine. Sometimes, he falling and injuring himself through the process. Though his intended message is always ruined by his bizarre presentation, his audience typically benefits from his appearance, as they all do not want to be associated with Foley again. One departure sketch real quick had George Foreman considering that he was too old and too weak to continue boxing. He happened to walk by the van down by the river where he comes across Matt Foley. Foley does not go into his usual tirade, instead ordering Foreman to do all sorts of chores for him, such as grilling hamburgers, claiming the work is for dexterity. When Foreman determines that Foley is using him, he punches Foley, causing Foreman to realize he can still fight, and ultimately goes on to win the world championship. Foreman then recites this tale to Tim Meadows, who wonders out loud why he's cooking hamburgers for Foreman, only to be barked at, "You know why, for dexterity." Being a Wisconsin native, Farley was asked to portray Matt Foley at the 1994 Rose Bowl banquet. He delivered a comedic motivational speech to the Wisconsin Badgers football team, who were facing the UCLA Bruins that year, and won the game 21-16. Plans for a film version with Spade in a supporting role were shelved after Farley's death in 1997. Groo, perhaps Foley's most iconic SNL character, thoughts on the motivational speaker, Matt Foley?
Hilarious. And it's just evident in pretty much every Matt Foley sketch, the other people are always trying not to laugh. And the more that they can't control their laughter, the funnier it is. And my favorite Matt Foley moment was in that first one where he's literally got his face in between Spade and Christina Applegate, and they're talking about the writing, and he's like, from what I hear, you're not using that paper for writing, but for rolling doobies. And Christina Applegate just literally, I think she has to like turn away, like put her head off camera because she's laughing so hard. And I just, it's a genius character, and it's one that can never didn't hit. It never failed. Every sketch, and there were only 8 of them, huh?
That's what I got. Yeah. I remember. I mean,
doesn't
Farley
seem like a lot.
Yeah, Farley had only a 5-year run with Saturday Night Live. So we'll talk about the end of his run. But I mean, that first one is a classic. You can watch it on YouTube, and it never gets old.
Yeah, I'd say that the character is probably his most iconic because it seems to be the most repeated. But there are others that, if they had taken further, than they did, instead of just one-offs, and I'm curious to see what you've got on that front. But as far as recurring characters, yes, that's his signature.
Groo, let me give you another recurring character. Another famous Farley character was Todd O'Connor of the Bill Swirsky's Superfans, a group of stereotypical Chicagoans who constantly shouted, "Da Bears." Bill Swirsky Superfans was a recurring sketch about the Chicago sports fans on SNL. It was prominently featured from 91 to 92, and its characters have made various other appearances since its inception. The sketch is notable as the media portrayal of the inland north dialect of American English that predominates in Chicago, most famously through the distinctive pronunciation of the phrase "the Bears." SNL writer and Triumph the Insult Comedy Dog creator, this is actually pretty funny, Robert Smigel visited Wrigley Field to see the Cubs play. He noticed a prevalence of large men who wore walrus mustaches and large sunglasses, looking similar to Mike Ditka, who had been hired to coach the city's NFL team, the Chicago Bears. Quoted Smigel, "There was just a swagger amongst these very virile-looking men. All sports fans kind of have it." Smigel and, again, Bob Odenkirk, who I absolutely love in Better Call Saul and Mr. Show, a lot of great comedy stuff from Bob
Larry
Odenkirk.
Sanders.
Yeah. He joined the writing staff of SNL in 1988. And
was he a Harvard guy with Conan?
He might have been. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know. But in 1991, Chicago native Joe Montana hosted SNL. Odenkirk suggested to Smigel that they pitch the fan characters to him, and after the host liked it, the writers finally came up with the setting, parodying, and I know you remember this, the sports writer on TV, which was on Sports Channel locally in New York, which was a long-running Chicago area radio show that did have a TV presence, which had been adapted for television by local UHF channel WFLD TV, featuring three veteran local sports writers, including Bill Gleason, known for his thick Chicago accent, and Rick Tellender, who was the young guy who also wrote for Sports Illustrated. And they would just sit around a table smoking stogies, drinking beer, discussing pre-dates like all these what's like the shows on ESPN where they discuss topics that it was like a sports debate show. Do you remember that? Yeah. It was on Sports Channel like in the afternoons. When
yes, it was. Was it afternoons or was it like 3 a.m?
It might have been 3 a.m, but I remember Rick Tellender was like the young guy.
Yes, it was usually followed by George Michael's Sports Machine.
That was a great show. Yeah. You know what I loved about George Michael's Sports Machine? It was the only mainstream sports wrap-up show that actually showed wrestling.
Yep. Yes, it did.
Back in the day.
Yes, it did. I remember that. Yeah.
All right, so go ahead.
Well, this, you mentioned the Swirsky superfans, and there's one, as far as Chris Farley's concerned, there's one problem I have with all those sketches, and that I never found him to be the funniest guy there. I always found George Wendt to be the anchor for those sketches, and if you look at most of Chris Farley's other ensemble sketches, he literally comes in and eats the scenery.
Dominates.
Yes. Here he didn't. He's pretty restrained because it's not his thing. So he's certainly not the star of these sketches. Which is why if you ask,
can I give you some?
Go ahead.
Can I give you some background on the sketch, or you want to move on?
No, go ahead.
All right, so I think you'll get a chuckle on some of the stuff. Kevin, so it was based off of Chuck Swirsky, who was the radio voice of the Chicago Bulls. Subsequent sketches included George Wendt as Bill's brother Bob, with an occasional appearance by Beth Cahill as Bob's daughter Denise. Macaulay Culkin appeared as Tommy Arnold, Pat's younger nephew, who played a pilgrim, I remember seeing this one, in a short-lived school program about Thanksgiving, in which an Indian played by Culkin's brother Kieran predicted the Bears would lead the Detroit Lions 96-14 at the half. John Goodman actually replaced Mike Myers' character, Pat Arnold. The change in Pat's appearance was attributed to massive weight gain. Montaigne's absence was invariably explained away by George Wendt saying his brother Bill just had a nutter heart attack. The characters were typically shown in a sports bar drinking large amounts of beer, smoking, and gorging themselves on ribs, Polish sausage, and similar foods. All the characters wore dark sunglasses and thick mustaches to resemble Ditka, the popular coach of the Chicago Bears at the time, who was the idol of all the superfans. They would also discuss the Chicago Bulls basketball team and their star player Michael Jordan, who was winning the first three NBA championships at the time. SNL alumnus Dan Aykroyd also appeared on the sketch as Todd cousin Irvin Manway, who was originated in the Consumer Probe on the spot original SNL sketches. We talked about the accent. Typical debates involved Mike Ditka one time versus a hurricane. In this particular debate, the superfans believed that Ditka could defeat the hurricane, in which it was revealed that the name of the hurricane was Hurricane Ditka, at which at that point Todd O'Connor, which was Farley, had a heart attack out of confusion. Who would win in the competition for world domination, the Bears or the Bulls? Who would win, Mike Ditka versus the Indianapolis 500, driving the Bears team bus? And how many points would Michael Jordan score if he played the entire game by himself while lounging on a recliner? The last one was they even had one, I think, on a Jeopardy-like game show in which the final Jeopardy question was Bears versus Bulls, in which the hilarious responses from the contestants, it was revealed that the correct answer was such a matchup would tear the fabric of the space-time continuum and destroy the planet, meaning the United Nations would have to step in prior to stop such mass destruction.
And that was the right answer.
That was. The characters appeared in 9 episodes in 2 years. With Ditka's departure from the Bears in 1993 and significant cast changes on SNL, the sketch and the characters all but disappeared. They did, however, make a special appearance for the celebration of the Chicago Bulls' 91 through 93 three-peat championships. Farley's death months later seemed to preclude the possibility of any future Superfan sketches, though the Superfan sketch has been brought back a half dozen times or so on SNL or other media outlets. Well, Groo, I was going to ask your opinion. You gave us some opinion. Bill Swirsky's Superfan sketches skewering sports fans' absolute crazy devotion to their teams and to the Chicago culture. Well, I guess I'll give it to you one more time, Groo. thoughts on what I thought was a pretty great, solid sketch, but I do agree with some of your points with Farley. Superfan, Groo.
Yeah,
go.
They all, again, like Matt Foley, they all of them, they never missed. The problem is, we're talking about Farley, and they're good with or without Farley. These sketches are, because of the writing, because of the basis in truth, and the guest stars that they have, those sketches have been able to run without Chris Farley, and that's
you didn't love when Farley had the heart attack and he put the plastic steak in his mouth. And
the
pork chop flew out of his mouth.
Yeah, but I'm saying the ones like you mentioned, that thing with Goodman, that was hilarious, and even later on when they've appeared in commercials, long after Chris Farley's death, they're still funny because it's a parody of something real. So I wouldn't call it one of Chris Farley's signature sketches. I'd call it a great sketch on Saturday Night Live. But do you remember that Mantegna episode, the opening of it, which is one of my favorite openings ever for some reason? Do you remember it?
No, I don't.
He comes out, Mantegna comes out, Joe Mantegna, and he's giving his monologue, and he sees a father and a son dressed in like sporty clothes, getting up and leaving. And he asks them why they're leaving, and the father says, "Well, my son thought it was Joe Montana hosting." So he brings the kid backstage, and he's like, "Listen, you like Joe Montana?" "Yes, yeah, me too. You want to see him play next week?" "Yeah, all right, then sit your ass down and watch the show. Because one phone call from me, and Montana ain't going into the Hall of Fame. He's going into the hospital." like they had all these things. And I thought that was just a great opening, and I just mentioned it because you mentioned it. But, that's my take on the super fans. Great stuff.
Okay. Would you consider the Chippendales Dancer, the famous sketch that paired Chris Farley with guest host Patrick Swayze, a great Farley sketch? This massively famous sketch really sold Farley's penchant for physical comedy and the ability to make fun of his own physique as an overweight, out-of-shape Chippendales dancer who only lost to Swayze because he had a much better body. I mean, it's on YouTube. It's got a massive presence. Not too much more to say about it, but Groo, thoughts on Farley's Chippendale Dancer sketch on SNL?
Not one of my favorites. I'm offended by it.
Oh,
no,
really?
I'm just kidding. No, I'm not offended by it. But the reason that it's not one of my favorites is because
I'm really surprised.
I'll tell you why. Because when you see it for the first time, it's so shockingly funny. You don't know what's coming. And once it comes, it's hysterical. Without the element of surprise, it doesn't hold up. Matt Foley's always funny. Bennett Brower, I'm sure you'll get to, is always funny. But this is a gimmick sketch that is funny the first, maybe the second time you see it, in my opinion. And now I have no interest in seeing it because I know what it is. And so I've never really truly loved that sketch. It's definitely inspired. But if you're talking about dated, that one's dated in the worst way because the element of surprise is gone. So that's why it's not one of my favorites.
I just think it's because you're ultimately very liberal and you don't want to fat shame anyone.
That's not true.
That's a joke.
That's a joke. I know that's a joke.
Well, here's what I'll say about it. I politely disagree. I think it's a classic sketch, number one, because Farley is so nimble for a big man. But what I think makes it, which I also enjoy, is even the other players, Nealon, I don't know if it was Nora Dunn, but Mike Myers, how seriously they're taking the judging. And
Kevin Nealon is very funny in that sketch.
He's very good. He's like, we have to make the tough decision. We're Chippendales. Very dry comedy.
Yes.
But the whole angle is also that Farley's body is so horrifically worse than Swayze's, but he would, if their bodies were anywhere close, Farley would win because he's the superior dancer.
Yeah. Which
we know is an inside joke because Patrick Swayze was a professional dancer
and he was dirty dancing, and but a similar sketch which doesn't get as much love as that one which I find funnier, is the ice skating one.
With Farley?
Yeah. Pump up the jam, like that one to me is funnier. I don't know. I can't tell you why. It's just funnier.
SNL has another one. They had the about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. They had the men's heterosexual ice skating championship, and it's the similar. It's a bunch of guys with like Metallica shirts, barely being able to ice skate. But
but seeing
stuff.
Farley in that get up and like dancing on the it's still funny to me. You'll never see me really laughing at the Chippendales one because it's just not that funny anymore.
Okay, well, we'll agree to
because
disagree.
It reminds me of some. Wait, what happened? Oh, sorry.
There's of course the cadre of the Gap Girls sketches, a group of sketches following a group of teen girls who worked together at a local mall. The Gap Girls featured Adam Sandler, David Spade, and of course Chris Farley.
Leave me alone, I'm
as we
starving.
can hear Groo's laughing in the background. The guys would play their characters in drag, making the Valley Girl slang, who did not take their jobs seriously, often telling complaining customers to quote-unquote cinch it. Their enemy was Tracy, played by Rob Schneider, whom they called the Donut Hut Slut. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up anymore. As a rhyming insult, as a girl who worked at the donut place in the same shopping mall as them. The sketch was best remembered for the line where Farley was eating most of the Gap Girls' French fries, and Spade's character reminds her that they were on a diet, to which the character immediately went from a Valley Girl falsetto to a deep, possessed voice shouting, "Lay off of me, I'm starving." Causing Sandler and Spade to struggle not to break character, with Sandler attempting to stifle his laughter as Farley, who was a fake choking Spade. This stuff I watched a whole bunch on YouTube. To me, really brilliant stuff, highlighting some absolute SNL comic legends, not only Farley, but you have Spade, Sandler, and even Rob Schneider is great as the Donut Hut Slut.
Yeah.
So, Groo, Gap. I don't even know if they're Gaps anymore. The Gap Girls. I toss it to you. What do you got?
Absolutely hilarious. All of them. A great idea for a sketch. Very well executed. And, of course, this is what I meant by Farley just coming in and dominating, and, what he, like, not just when he says that thing about the French fries, but when he's eating them beforehand. They're sitting there talking like, and he's sitting there like, like, that's funny. Like, every move he makes in this sketch is just absolutely hysterical. And, it's based on a version of truth, like in that era.
What I loved about the Gap Girls is they all sort of had a particular role. I mean, Farley plays the fat, for lack of a better, the chunky girl. Spade is the sarcastic girl that we know. Sandler is the oh my gosh guy, the overly sensitive, please cut it out, girl. And even Rob Schneider's like the mean, bitchy girl that they all hate, who works across the way in the mall. It's just, even Spade was great, but Sandler, I was finding myself even laughing at, Sandler just, as well. But I agree with you. Farley's clearly the standout in these sketches. He's great.
Could they do that sketch today? I mean, if Farley were alive.
Well, I don't think so.
They would have to get a couple of guys in there. They'd have to get some, gender neutral people in there.
No, you know what? You might be. Actually, I hate to say it because it's a bunch of white girls, so that's acceptable fodder for comedy. But that's just my thoughts. You might be able to get away with some of that stuff. I don't know about the weight stuff anymore. I don't know. I haven't watched SNL from beginning to end in quite a while, so I don't know.
Oddly enough, the couple of episodes that they've done, the at-home ones, have been really been really funny.
No, the SNL, no, they have not. The first one or two are usually funny, and then it's just a dearth of.
There have only been two.
Yeah, I mean, I lost. The first one was, I mean, the Zoom sketch was great. Then it was very, very hit and miss. I mean, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg workout thing was kind of cute with, lifting the Q-tips. That was, funny. The last one, I mean, Kenan Thompson's great. The What's Up, and then the David Ortiz lunch thing was kind of funny.
Yeah, and I thought the opening was funny. The thing that what's his name did, I forgot.
All right.
But in any case,
no one cares.
I know.
Okay, so
I don't even care.
There was also the favorite of ours, Farley portraying Bennett Brower, a Weekend Update commentator. This is probably one of our favorites.
Couldn't find anything on YouTube.
There's a little bit, very little.
Very little. But there's. I keep
like
finding
clip.
I keep finding the same thing of this guy portraying Bennett Brower. Did you see that?
Yes. Can I give my intro to the character? Yeah, I did see the exact same thing that you saw. Bennett Brower, the Weekend Update commentator who often divulged his personal and hygienic problems via air quotes. Debuting on April 10th, 1993, Brower was brought in to provide commentary for Kevin Nealon's Weekend Update. Instead of providing commentary, he would often launch into a tirade about how surprised he is that the network has let him back on the air, before vividly describing his poor hygiene, lack of social grace, his resentment towards the viewers for preferring other, more photogenic commentators to him. Bennett again would make regular use of air quotes to emphasize every point he made. For example, maybe I'm not the norm. I'm not camera friendly. I don't wear clothes that fit me. I'm not a heartbreaker. I haven't had sex with a woman.
I don't know how that works.
I guess I don't fall in line. I'm not hygienic. I don't let my scabs heal. I can't reach all of the parts on my body. When I sleep, I sweat profusely. In one highlight, Farley's Brower was made to fly via cables, although a technical glitch delayed the ascent, thereby creating one of SNL's most famous bloopers. As Nealon tries to get the cables untangled, Brower exclaims, "I have a weight problem. Can't they lift me?" Brower is then lifted high above a cheering audience in a manner akin to Peter Pan. Kevin Nealon then continues his Weekend Update, and the closing music is played when a loud crash is heard. The cable has broken, and a disheveled Bennett Brower emerges from the counter, which had been damaged by his fall. That's actually on the Best of Chris Farley video or DVD or CD. I remember, Groo, early on, that was one of your favorite characters, so I'll throw it to you. Thoughts on Bennett Brower, Chris Farley's air quotes guy?
Still is one of my favorites. It hits so close to home. I'm not savvy. I don't bathe regularly. I mean, just could any of it's just you can't do it justice by even talking about it. You got to see it now. I'm bummed that I couldn't find a clip of it to put in the beginning package there, but
it was like a 40-second clip. That was it. Everything else was like other people doing the character.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything that was worth putting on it. But that flying thing, like the way he's like just sort of like swimming in the air, and like going wee, just this, and you look back on that and you look at this guy and this character more than anyone I think I've seen him do. You look at that and say, man, this guy was so damn funny, but he must have been just an absolute mess inside. Like, I see that when I see the Bennett Brower character. I don't know why just that character.
Well, don't they say that? Don't they say comedy comes from a lot of pain?
Yeah, but he's always able to hide it.
Well, you don't think, though, that a lot of that was maybe stuff that he didn't like about himself?
It was. That's the thing. But the Bennett Brower, that character was really a window into him. watching it now, not watching it then. Watching it then, when people are alive and vibrant, you don't see that, and that's part of the trouble. When he died, then you look back and you see some of these things, and that more than anything, that character's much more poignant now than maybe some of the other ones. But it's also one of the funniest.
Speaking of poignant, Groo, Chris Farley even played himself famously on the Chris Farley Show, a talk show on SNL in which Farley interviewed the guest with poorly conceived questions or trailed off about subjects not germane to the guest. Rather than ask his guest questions that had any kind of significance or allow his guest to plug a current project, he would invariably act nervously and simply describe scenes from a film in which the guest actor appeared, or occasionally even spoke about a film that had nothing to do with the guest. After asking the performer whether he remembered this particular event, Farley would say, "That was awesome." Other times he would ask questions that were of little relevance or made no sense at all. The top guest on the Chris Farley Show was Jeff Daniels. Jeff Daniels was the first ever guest on the Chris Farley Show. That premiered October 5th, 1991. Daniels was appearing to promote his newest movie, The Butcher's Wife.
But Daniels more, right?
Yes, Daniels gives mostly yes or no answers to Farley's questions, whether or not he remembers certain scenes of movies. The episode also features a question from a caller who mimics Farley's "Do you remember?" questions. Eventually, Farley and the caller ignore Jeff Daniels and reminisce about a previous episode in which the caller asked about Arnold Schwarzenegger. Asked Arnold Schwarzenegger a question. Martin Scorsese was a second guest on the show, originally airing November 16th, 91. Scorsese was there to promote his film Cape Fear. As with the first sketch, Farley introduces himself, stumbles over his words, and eventually discusses action movies with his guests before taking a caller. The caller asks Scorsese a question germane to filmmaking, but Farley remarks she called in before on an unseen show where he interviewed Bruce Willis. Then the conversation goes to the mirror scene from Die Hard, which Farley was impressed that John McClane had to make his way across the floor, leaving Scorsese completely aghast at how the interview went off the rails. And, of course, the one that maybe everyone knows the best, the third and final Chris Farley Show, February 13th, 93, Paul McCartney, who was that night's musical guest, was a guest on the Chris Farley Show. Chris Farley acts awestruck and giddy in the presence of the former Beatle, repeatedly asking him ridiculous questions, typically starting with, "Do you remember when you were in the Beatles?" Or, "That was a hoax, right?" in reference to the rumors of McCartney's death, to which he gives one or few word answers. Farley attempts a serious question, asking him about when the singer was arrested in Narita Airport for possession of marijuana, which McCartney replies he's ashamed about and sensitive about the incident. Farley then hits himself over the head and says, "I'm so stupid." McCartney consoles him that being in show business, he must face up to uncomfortable questions, as he was asked the same question by Maria Shriver earlier in the day. Farley then trails off saying Shriver is married to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then asks him, "Did you see the Terminator?" This is the only Chris Farley show sketch not to feature a guest caller. As the scene fades out, Farley is conversing with McCartney, recommending that he sees the Schwarzenegger film. So, before we get to some final thoughts on SNL, I don't know. You remember the Chris Farley Show and any stuff on the Chris Farley Show?
Very well, and it's good that they stopped after 3, because if they made it a regular thing, it would have, because it's a one joke premise, and it would have worn thin. But the pinnacle moment for that sketch was in the first one with Jeff Daniels, when you didn't really know what it was until Daniel says, "I'm promoting my movie, The Butcher's Wife," in which I co-star with Demi Moore. And then Farley goes, "Demi Moore, she's married to Bruce Willis, right?" And he goes, "Yes." And you're like, "Did you see Die Hard? Remember when he crawled through the thing and was in the
glass.
elevator shaft and fell down. You're like, that was awesome. And then you could tell by the audience laughter, it wasn't like high-pitched laughter. It was like, what are we watching here? And right there was the essence for the entire thing. And that, to me, is the funniest moment of all those. Because everything else was pretty much the same as that. The callers were great. The Chris Farley show was not the insight into Chris that Bennett Brower was, but I love the neuroticism. Is that a word?
Well,
Is that a word?
Yeah, it definitely shows his shyness among fellow celebrities.
Yes,
and maybe him feeling he's not a celebrity.
That's what he was like on talk shows. He was, when he was a guest on the couch on talk shows, like on Conan O'Brien or Letterman. That's kind of what he was like, don't you think?
Yeah, but it definitely accentuated his shyness and how he would stumble with his questions, and of course he would always go back to what he loved, which was the mainstream action film. So somehow there was always a Schwarzenegger or Bruce Willis movie mention while he's discussing, with other stars.
And speaking of Sylvester Stallone,
no, please don't. Please don't. Real quick, Groo, Farley also performed other impersonations on SNL. Tom Arnold, Andrew Giuliani, Jerry Garcia, Meatloaf, Norman Schwarzkopf, Dom DeLuise, which is great.
Yes.
Roger Ebert, Carney Wilson, Newt Gingrich.
Just every fat person who ever...
Mindy Cohn,
Mama
Cass.
I give up.
Hank Williams Jr. and Rush Limbaugh. And
goodness gracious.
I mean, a lot of heavy-set guys and gals, but I mean, just off the top of my head, the Tom Arnold was brilliant.
Yep.
Tom Arnold's manic, almost drug-induced state at the time.
And Victoria Jackson was Roseanne, right?
And his Dom DeLuise, when they did a clip of the 1970s era Johnny Carson, I remember just really, I don't know if it was laugh out loud, but it was really brilliant.
It was laugh out loud. It was laugh out loud.
That 70s look.
When he pissed in his pants. When he pissed in his pants.
Yeah,
I wonder if he actually pissed in his pants. It's hard to tell. That was like when Carvey was like, "This is a clip. We got a little crazy." Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, and myself.
But I mean, all of the Carney Wilson, all the fat women were great.
Oh God!
And even Gingrich, I watched like a 1990-something clip from C-SPAN where he went into the House of Representatives and Newt Gingrich was speaking and he interrupted. And it was back in the day when it was not mean-spirited. It was just really, he had the place in stitches. He had Newt Gingrich sit down.
None of them were mean-spirited. He didn't do mean-spirited comedy.
It was just
the victim was always himself. Think about it. I mean, it's like the writers are sitting there like, okay, we need a Meatloaf. Oh, Farley. Well, we're not going to have David Spade play Meatloaf. And Farley he knew that that's what was going to work, and whether it just ate him up inside or not, he didn't let it show. But I'm sure it did.
Well, Farley's run on SNL ends after 5 years in 1995. Adam Sandler told Conan O'Brien on The Tonight Show that NBC fired him and Farley from the show in 95. I tried to... There was not a lot on that allegation that they were fired. I couldn't really find much. So that takes us to the end of the Chris Farley run. Groo, final thoughts on Chris Farley and Saturday Night Live?
Farley will always go down as one of probably in the top 10, if not top 5, of the performers who ever graced that stage. I don't think that he and Sandler, because I have read, there are some books about it. I have read one. I don't think he and Sandler were fired for the same reason. Because because Sandler's comedy was kind of wearing thin on the show. He was definitely destined to be the movie star that he became. Farley was still doing great, hilarious stuff, but his issues, like there were a lot in those 5 years. There were a lot of trips to rehab, a lot of weight losses and weight gains. There was a lot of stuff going on there. So I think that his termination was sort of a culmination of all of that, according to the book that I read. But the legacy is and always will be there. And, you can't make an argument that there's many people whose legacy is bigger than his. No pun intended.
During his time on SNL, Farley appeared in comedy films Wayne's World, Coneheads, and Airheads, and an uncredited but memorable cameo in Billy Madison as the angry bus driver who completely overreacts when hit in the head by an errant sandwich thrown by one of the students. The angry bus driver, in retaliation, steals and eats all of the 30 student bag lunches on the field trip. And if in the funniest bit, brags to Adam Sandler's Billy Madison that he got it on with that piece of ash, Veronica Vaughn, the school teacher, to which Sandler keeps on saying, "No, you didn't." This further incenses the angry bus driver, who goes back onto the bus to yell and scream at the students even more. After 1995, Farley and most of his fellow cast members were released from their contracts at SNL. Farley began focusing on his film career. His first two major films, Tommy Boy and Black Sheep, starred with his SNL colleague and close friend David Spade. They were, for the most part, a domestic box office success, earning around $32 million each and gaining a large cult following on home video. So let's get to it, Groo. A nothing worthwhile classic, Tommy Boy, starring Chris Farley as Tommy Callahan III, David Spade as Richard Hayden, Bo Derek as Beverly Barish, Tommy's stepmother, Julie Warner as Michelle Brock, Dan Aykroyd as Ray Zielinski, the late Brian Dennehy as Thomas Big Tom Callahan Jr., Tommy's father, and, of course, Rob Lowe as Paul Blarish, Tommy's stepbrother. I mean, Groo, we could go over the plot. I mean, I don't know if there's really a need to, so let's get right to it. I'll just wrap it up with this. Tommy Boy opened on March 31st. Not wrap it up, but Tommy Boy opened on March 31st, 1995, grossed $8 million its opening weekend, finished first at the box office. As we said a little bit earlier, the film had a total box office gross of $32.7 million, which I was a little bit surprised. I thought Tommy Boy may have did better, quote unquote. I know it's some years back. So I'm not going to go over the plot, but before we get to critical reception, just overall thoughts on maybe the box office and Tommy Boy as a movie.
Tommy Boy as a movie is a really good movie. It's hilarious, of course, but it's also a good movie. It's got a good plot. It's got a great cast. Not a good cast, a great cast. And they really did a great job of making sure that they surrounded Chris Farley in really what was his first starring role with all the tools that he needed to be able to let loose and do what made him great. That's why it worked so well. It did not work as well in subsequent starring vehicles for him because they kind of put it all on his shoulders. This movie's not on his shoulders. It's on everybody's shoulders. It's an ensemble with a standout, and he is great. Everybody's great. The writing is good, and you care about the mission. In Black Sheep, do you really give a shit about the election? No, you just want to. No, wait a second. You asked me. I'm telling you why I like Tommy Boy.
Well, I want to say one thing real quick.
What?
Your subsequent comments. Yeah. You mean subsequent or subsequent?
I don't know. I'm not an English teacher.
I'm dizzy right now, and I've had 17 cups of coffee.
Tommy Boy is good writing. It's a very well structured movie, which sells the comedy even better. There are great moments in Black Sheep that are really funny, but they're not strung together. They didn't take the effort. They figured they would just, hey, we got Farley. He'll make it funny. Let's just leave the page empty. Tommy Boy didn't do that. I saw Tommy Boy in the theater in Israel, and because that's when it came out. And I remember laughing so hard. And then as I was walking out of the theater, somebody, an Israeli who was in the theater also turned to me and said, "You were very funny in that movie." And I said, "Thank you very much." And then I kept walking.
Well, I'll get to the critical piece, but yes, a great movie.
I didn't say great.
You talked.
I said
I'm busy
said
right now.
good.
You talked. I tried to get in a point, and you talked over me.
You put words in my mouth.
I would say this. I agree with you. They surrounded him with a very talented cast. I would say out of all of them, I was most surprised at Rob Lowe. He's phenomenal in this movie. Fantastic. And I think it opened sort of the door for more SNL-type comedies. Rob Lowe really, I sort of had a second career as sort of these supporting leading men who are just sort of personal wrecks and a lot of comic fodder. But there's a sweetness about this movie that I love. And yes, I agree. They put in the time to establish the characters, and you really do care about them. And yes, your point about you want to see them succeed in the mission.
Yeah.
Clearly, you're rooting for Farley and Spade to get out there and make the company a rousing success.
Yeah, and everybody in there except for Farley is playing sort of against type. Brian Dennehy usually played like a tough guy, very often an antagonist. Here he's a lovable pop. You really feel it when he dies in the movie. Spoiler alert, sorry. So he's terrific. Bo Derek is terrific. If she could be great in a movie without taking her clothes off, she's doing a good job. Yeah, you're damn right. Nah.
I'm using all 10 fingers right now.
Yeah, and even David Spade, who up till that point,
he's so young.
Till that point.
Oh, sorry.
Up till that point, David Spade was the Saturday Night Live clown.
But you don't think he's playing in? You don't think he's playing in type, which he does so well, the sarcastic.
Yes, but he is also playing unlikable. He's not likable in the movie, which is what he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be a dick, and that takes balls to play that. He develops. What do they call what you just did?
I don't know, but I mean,
it's like lollipop.
Yeah, but I agree with you. But that Spade's going to come around, and ultimately he's going to be redeemed at the end of the movie.
Sure,
and be a good guy.
It's paint by numbers movie making, but when you do it right, who cares? When you do it right with good writing, funny dialogue, great acting. When you do it right and it works, who cares if it's cliche?
All right, you're live. What do you think about the gross of $32.7 million in 1995?
At the time,
I thought it would be a little bit more.
I think at 50. the time, that the budget for this movie was probably very low, probably in the 5 to 10 million range. So that's a hit for a first starring vehicle. For someone from Saturday Night Live to pull out 30, that would translate to probably $75 or $80 million today, which would be a hit for someone like that. That's like, if you took Bobby Moynihan and put him in, some kind of movie tailored to his talent where he was the star and it became a $50, $60 million movie, that's a huge hit for a guy like that. So I think this was the same thing.
All right, Groo, how was Tommy Boy critically received? Tommy Boy received mixed reviews from critics upon its release. Rotten Tomatoes gave the film a 42% approval rating based on 43 reviews, with an average rating of 5.1 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, though it benefits from the comic charms of its two leads, Tommy Boy too often feels like a familiar sketch stretched thin. Metacritic, the film, gave it a score of 46 out of 100 based on reviews from 20 critics indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences did seem to love the movie a bit more, having CinemaScore grade the film out as an A-. Critic Kevin Thomas of the Los Angeles Daily News gave the film a positive review, calling it sweet-natured, a good belly laugh of a movie. Amongst the negative reviews, Chicago Sun-Times film critic Roger Ebert wrote, Tommy Boy is one of those movies that plays like an explosion down at the screenplay factory. You can almost picture a bewildered office boy, his face smudged with soot, wandering through the ruins and rescuing pages at random. Too bad they didn't mail them the insurance company instead of filming them. The film is on Ebert's most hated list. That's kind of surprising. Karen James of the New York Times wrote that the film was a very poor cousin of a dopey Jim Carrey movie. Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Tonight graded the film a C on an A to F scale. Ken Hanks of the Mountain Express said the film was passably funny star vehicle, nothing great. So, Andrew, I throw it to you. A bit surprised by the middling to negative reaction of Tommy Boy at this time by the movie critics.
Not at all. Not surprised. You know what else? You know what other movie got really bad reviews when it came out?
Oh, tell us.
The Blues Brothers, which is a classic now. Saturday Night Live was always going to be the critic's nightmare and the audience's favorite. So you would never expect a movie like this to get good reviews. What are they going to do? They give Schindler's List 3.5 stars. They're going to give Tommy Boy 3.5 stars. No, it's not going to happen.
What do you got to go down? You got to go down the Jew road now.
All right, fine. Gone with the Wind. What do you What do you want me to say?
Well, let me ask you a quick question. Since you are the filmographist of the group, was there ever a truly well-received SNL movie in the theaters, like a 3 to 4 star, real solid reviews?
Not that I can think of. I could think of. The only one.
Wait a second. Maybe Catherine Gallagher, Superstar.
No, that was MacGruber.
Love MacGruber.
I think it's hilarious, but you're not going to find a review above
2:00 in the morning. You got a couple of beer buzz, and you got a thing of like chips, and MacGruber's on the phone on TV. I'm not moving an inch off the couch.
We went to see Night at the Roxbury, and as terrible as we knew it was a terrible movie, but we loved it anyway. That's what these are like, and I think Wayne's World stepped it up a notch, but even Wayne's World didn't get great reviews. But I think Wayne's World was put together by a more reputable set of people. So, but I can't think of any Saturday Night Live movie that when it came out was, oh my God, this is a must-see from like critics. I can't think of anything right now.
Wayne's World Part 2 was savaged, and I remember it was clearly nowhere near as good.
See, I like Wayne's World 2 better.
Oh,
I think it's funnier.
You're just trying to be shocking right now.
I am not.
All right, fast forward to 1996 as Farley rejoins David Spade for Black Sheep, an American political comedy film. I don't know if I would call it political, but directed by Penelope Spheris, who directed the Mike Myers vehicle Wayne's World. Written by Fred Wolf of SNL writing fame, and again starring both Chris Farley and David Spade. The film follows a political aide who is assigned to control the brother of a candidate for the governor of Washington, who attempts to offer his campaign unwanted, incompetent, and publicly embarrassing help. Film also stars Tim Matheson, Christine Ebersol, and Gary Busey. Black Sheep grossed $32.3 million, so virtually the same box office as Tommy Boy. No need to cover the plot of the movie, but it is interesting to note that SNL creator Lorne Michaels produced the film. Lorne Michaels called Black Sheep, quote-unquote, an act of desperation by Paramount in that the movie studio had underpromoted Spade and Farley's 1995 film Tommy Boy, and was now looking to profit from the same comedy formula. Lorne Michaels had contentious battles with the studio over the script from 1993's Wayne World 2, and the animosity between the two camps spilled over into Farley's contract with Paramount. Although his agent lined up possible roles for Farley in The Cable Guy and Kingpin, the movie studio remained firm on wanting another buddy comedy with Farley and Spade. The film was written by Fred Wolf, who stated that the studio told him to deliver a finished script by midnight on Sunday, the last day Chris was contractually allowed to get out of the movie. If we didn't have a finished script, any finished script, they were going to sue me. Wolf wrote 45 pages within a few days and dropped off the script at the Paramount lot 15 minutes before the deadline. After reading the script, Farley said that he wasn't crazy about it and only agreed to do the film after coaxing from David Spade. Penelope Spheeris had notable disagreements with writer Fred Wolf and David Spade throughout the entire production of the film. Spheeris fired Wolf 3 times from the production of this film. He was hired back twice by Farley and once by Lorne Michaels, then refused to speak to him and finally banned him from the set. Her relationship with Spade was equally as tumultuous. Speaking to Farley's official biographer, she said, "I don't think I ever even smiled at anything David Spade's ever done. I still have a recording of the message David left on my answering machine. He said, 'You spent this whole movie trying to cut my comedy balls off.'" The two worked again on the 1998 comedy Senseless. The combination of the bright lights on the set and working under sunlight while filming Black Sheep caused permanent damage to David Spade's eyes. Groo, let me throw it to you before I go to the critical piece of the film. I spoke a lot. Clearly, there's a lot of tumult on the set of Black Sheep. So we spoke about it a little bit before we went on the air. I'll toss it to you, my film friend. Thoughts on Black Sheep?
Everything you said was right. All of that, everything you mentioned, a lot of which I didn't know, is very visible on the screen. You could tell that the lights are on, that the engine's running, but nobody's really behind the wheel. The only redeeming factors in that movie are the moments that Chris Farley gets. Spade is not funny in it. Matheson is not funny in it. Gary Busey's not funny in it. He comes across as stupid and crazy, and it's not funny. It's got nothing to do with the plot. Nothing has anything to do with the plot, so it's not a good movie. Fred Wolf is actually a pretty funny stand-up comedian. Do you know who he is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. So I absolutely believe everything you say, because that's kind of the way the business is, and they probably definitely wanted to cash in on the success of Tommy Boy, and they figured all they got to do is throw these two guys on screen and they'll figure it out. But that's not how it works, and that's how Black Sheep failed. Like I said, all it did was it gave Chris a couple of moments where he could really shine. And the clip we played in the beginning, the Kill Whitey part, is one of the biggest laughs, in my opinion, of Chris's career. But the rest of the movie is, it's a dud. It's definitely a dud.
Okay, well, speaking of dud, critics absolutely torched Black Sheep. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a final approval rating of 28%. Let me guess.
Oh, damn, I wanted to try to guess.
Oh, I'm sorry. Based on 32 critic reviews.
32? That's it?
Yeah, site consensus states Chris Farley and David Spade reunite to diminishing returns in Black Sheep, a comedic retread that succumbs to a woolly plot and sophomoric jokes. Audiences, again, surveyed by CinemaScore, gave it a better grade of B+ on a scale of A to F. I still find that hard to believe. Film critics Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert gave the film 2 thumbs down, with Siskel admitting that Black Sheep was one of only 3 films he ever walked out on. Wow. The other being
North.
$1 Million Duck and Maniac.
Oh.
Siskel stated several times that he did not like Chris Farley and thought he was a terrible actor, stating at one point, "I hate Chris Farley. He just rubs me the wrong way. I knew John Belushi. I knew John Candy. He's no John Belushi or John Candy." Ebert, who gave the movie a thumbs down, called it not only one of the worst comedies I've ever seen, but one of the least ambitious. It doesn't even feel like they're trying to make a good movie. A few weeks later, during the televised review of Happy Gilmore, Ebert tried to walk back some of his comments. He tried to defend Farley, saying he thought Siskel was too hard on him, and he believed that with the right script, Farley could be good in a film. Opinions of other reviewers for Black Sheep were mixed at best. Richard Levy of the Washington Post wrote, Farley and Spade managed to wring some humor from a series of juvenile setups and predictable pratfalls. Barry Walters of the San Francisco Examiner wrote that there isn't one shred of slight intellectual wit in this film. They tried to catch magic in a bottle twice. Say what you want about Tommy Boy, the Farley-Spade dynamic made it a very sweet, watchable movie. Black Sheep, while having a few laugh-out-loud moments, really failed on all levels. Andrew, final thoughts on Black Sheep?
Yeah, everything that they said was right. With a good script, these guys would do magic. Well, this is not a good script. There is a funny movie in there. It's a great premise. They just took a great premise and figured it and used it as an excuse to be a backdrop for a bunch of pratfalls when they should have gone the other way, and maybe even made it a little edgier, maybe R-rated, maybe something like that. But they did not put forth the effort on the production aspect of it. Farley gives it his all. Spade gives it his all. But without the support, it's not going to work. And
yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid, I wasn't a kid, but I remember walking out Black Sheep, very disappointed.
Yeah.
Very disappointed.
Yeah. But the Kill Whitey line did have me doubled over in laughter, I must say.
Yes. Okay, well, let's see here.
And that's been my mantra ever since.
Yeah, hey, why not? With everybody else, Kill Whitey. It feels good to say that. It feels good. Despite the crappy critical reviews, both films did have some box office of note, so Farley did become somewhat established as a bankable star. He was given the title role of Beverly Hills Ninja, which finished in first place at the box office in its opening weekend. 1997's Beverly Hills Ninja, an American martial arts comedy film directed by Dennis Duggan of Happy Gilmore fame. Written by Mark Feldberg and Mitch Klebanoff. They're in the Jewish Hall of Fame. Film stars Chris Farley, Nicolette Sheridan, Nathaniel Parker.
Fred Wolf is Jewish too. What is all these with the Jewish people writing scripts for Farley?
Jewish in Hollywood. Beverly Hills
Smigel.
Ninja,
Smigel too.
The main plot revolves around Haru, portrayed by Farley, a white orphan boy who was found by a clan of ninjas as an infant in an abandoned treasure chest and is raised by them. Haru never quite conforms to their culture and never acquires the skills of a ninja, but nonetheless is good-natured and perseveres in his personal ambitions. His mission brings him to Beverly Hills to investigate a murder mystery. It was the last film starring Farley to be released in his lifetime, as he died 11 months after his release. We don't need to go over the plot in detail, Groo, but as expected, as a Farley vehicle, Beverly Hills Ninja received generally negative reviews. You want to go for the Rotten Tomatoes percentage score? What do you think?
18.
Close. Very good. 14% rating based on reviews from 28 critics. The site's consensus states, far from silent but comedically deadly, Beverly Hills Ninja proves to be painfully unfunny. Metacritic gives the score 27 out of 100 based on reviews from 11 critics. Entertainment Weekly criticized the film, complaining that it had a yawner of a plot about Farley busting up a yen counterfeiting ring, and that when writers run out of ideas, they simply have Farley to walk into a lamppost or cop from old SNL skits. Let's see here. I mean, I don't need to read every negative review. I did see, again, Beverly Hills Ninja in the theaters, walked out very, very disappointed. I had one laugh out loud moment when Farley and Nicolette Sheridan go to bed, like in the dojo, and they show Sheridan taking off her robe in this beautiful female silhouette, and then Farley takes off his robe in this huge gut. All right.
Sounds familiar.
Any thoughts on Beverly Hills Ninja?
Very few, because I did not see it, and the reason why
what the hell
I didn't see it purposely because number one, bit of trivia: do you know who that movie was originally written for?
You're probably going to tell me something like Sylvester Stallone or
No,
Schwarzenegger.
the answer will surprise you. Surprisingly close to Chris Farley.
Well, then, if you're saying like heavy-set comedian,
I'll give you 4 names. Okay,
go ahead.
I'll give you 4 names.
Go ahead.
Arthur Lang, Dana Carvey,
No,
Phil Hartman,
no.
David Spade.
I'm going to go with Artie Lang.
Dana Carvey. It was written for Dana Carvey. It
He
was.
wouldn't have
But the reason, I just wanted to throw out that trivia there, but the reason, and the only way I know that is because it was written before anybody knew who Farley was, before Farley was actually on Saturday Night Live, when Dana Carvey was at the pinnacle of his career. But then he did Opportunity Knocks, and that was not successful, so they scrapped it. But Beverly Hills Ninja, when I saw the preview for it, at that point, and follow me here, at that point I was ready for Chris Farley to take it up a notch. I was ready for him to break out, to do what kind of like Robin Williams did, to break out of the Mork from Ork kind of roles and do a Good Morning Vietnam type thing, a Jim Carrey Truman Show type thing. Take the talent up to the next level. Showcase what you can do, but go deeper. And Chris Farley seemed to be moving in the opposite direction. Because Tommy Boy had a little of that, had glimmers of that, but then they go with Black Sheep and down to Beverly Hills Ninja, and I said, okay, this is not the trajectory that Farley should be going on. So I avoided that movie, and I still to this day have not seen it, and I have no interest in seeing it. And that's my thoughts on Beverly Hills Ninja.
Hang on one second. Are we doing okay, honey? Okay. I had to ask the boss lady. Okay.
I remember the only reason I like anything about Beverly Hills Ninja is because the trailer had that great song in it, Tarzan Boy by Baltimore, that great band.
What time? All right, we got to move on, Groo. Where
are you going? What do you got to do?
We're gonna. I don't know.
Are you going into the living room for the afternoon? Is that
yes, we are. As we said earlier, Almost Heroes was the last film starring Farley to be released in his lifetime, as he died 11 months after his release. So what actually happened to Chris Farley? For most of his adult life, Chris Farley struggled with alcohol and illicit drug abuse. Such addictions caused him to be suspended repeatedly from the cast of SNL. Bernie Brillstein, who personally managed Belushi and whose firm Brillstein Gray Entertainment managed Farley, repeatedly sent Farley to drug and alcohol rehabilitation. In 1997, there was a visible decline in Farley's health. Farley made a guest appearance on Nickelodeon's children's sketch comedy show All That, doing a sketch alongside future SNL cast member Kenan Thompson. The appearance proceeded without incident, but the stunt comedy Farley was famous for, with minimal effort, arguably it was noticeable as Farley was wheezing heavily and straining himself to perform. On October 25th, 1997, Farley made his final appearance on Saturday Night Live, the only time he hosted the show. Farley's hoarse voice and flushed skin were a subject of public scrutiny. He spoofed his comedic style in the opener by convincing Lorne Michaels he was fit for performance by dive bombing Michaels' desk. In actuality, Farley had strained his vocal cords during performance, and his exhaustion was so noticeable that the producers nearly recommended canceling his appearance. Farley's hosting had been considered so troublesome that the cast and crew that it was decided to be pulled from general circulation and from general syndication, as well as from SNL seasonal streaming, a decision only shared with Steven Seagal's hosting. So FYI, Steven Seagal hosted in 1991. As noted on the website mandatory.com, the cast and crew found Seagal difficult to work with, and the creator of Saturday Night Live, Lorne Michaels, referred to him as the worst host ever. So Farley's hosting gig has been pulled from all streaming-type applications. In the final years of his life, Farley had sought treatment for obesity and drug abuse on 17 occasions. December 18, 1997, Chris Farley was found dead by his younger brother John in his apartment at the John Hancock Center in Chicago. He was 33 years old. An autopsy revealed that Farley had died from an overdose of cocaine and morphine, a combination called a speedball, advanced atherosclerosis, was cited as a significant contributing factor to Farley's death, which of course has been compared to that of his SNL idol John Belushi, who died at the same age of similar circumstances and a similar combination of drugs. A private funeral was held for Farley on December 23rd, 1997 at Our Lady Queen of Peace Catholic Church in his hometown of Madison, Wisconsin. Groo, over 500 people attended the funeral, include many comedians who had worked with him on Saturday Night Live and on film. Luminaries such as Dan Aykroyd, Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Lorne Michaels, John Goodman, George Wendt, and Phil Hartman had attended. Notably absent was Chris Farley's best friend, David Spade. David Spade's non-appearance fueled speculation that there was some falling out with Chris Farley prior to his death. However, years later, even on Howard Stern, Farley explained that there was no ill will between him and Farley, admitting that his absence from the funeral was because he just could not handle it and found it too emotionally difficult to see the corpse of his longtime friend. Chris Farley admittedly was an unabashed fan of John Belushi, another comedic actor gone too soon. Any thoughts on the day that Farley was pronounced dead, and your thoughts, final thoughts on Chris Farley?
Well, I remember where I was. I was in the audience at the Conan O'Brien show, the old Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and before none of us in the audience knew what had happened, and before he taped the last segment, Conan came out and said, "All right, listen, guys, I have to say something, so it's not funny, so please don't laugh." He didn't tell us what it was. He just said, "We're not screwing around." Then they start, and he announced that Farley had died that afternoon, or at least the night before. And so the audience was in complete shock. You can look it up on YouTube. And then he played that song that we played in the beginning, "I'm a Clown, But I Cry." And it was a shock, but not surprising. I had seen that Saturday Night Live thing. We knew that he was a train wreck. My thoughts on him are, what might have been, but unlike Belushi, I think Belushi was his own worst enemy. Chris Farley, for some reason, just had problems that nobody could help him with. He was a lonely guy. Belushi was not that. Belushi had people around him. He had a wife. He had family. Pretty much, Farley was the life of the party. Everybody loved him, but nobody wanted to touch him. That's the way I see him. And he died the way, I think he had been visited by a prostitute the night before, something like that. I don't remember exactly what, but it was typical fashion. And it's just, you look at him and be like, the poor guy. He worked so hard to make people laugh, and the one thing that we couldn't give him was like, I don't know. He was the one thing he was missing in his life, and I think that's what ended up killing him. I think he just people like that, they do drugs to numb not for the party. They do it to numb the pain. Belushi, I think, was different. Belushi loved to party. Belushi was, a crazy, crazy guy, and a brilliant, crazy guy, but that's where I see the two as different, even though they're very parallel as far as the circumstances, the age, the trajectories of their careers. Belushi is a tragedy in that he was really on his way up, like completely. Farley is a tragedy it's an even greater tragedy in a lot of ways because of how unhappy we knew he was, and yet just because he made us laugh, we ignored all that. And I don't know, as a Chris Farley fan, there's a little bit of guilt in
What did you do?
me. It's like I laugh at him destroying himself because he makes that, he makes that the basis of his comedy. Him being a mess is what makes us laugh the most. That wasn't what Belushi was. It was different with him. So we laughed.
There was some elements to that. I mean, you had the SNL the Olympic, the donuts. He's running. He's an Olympian with the cigarette, and he's got the big gut. So I mean, I think a lot of comedy, as we said earlier, comes from pain. And so, was it terrible that we laughed at Chris Farley's pratfalls and Big Belly?
No, and I don't think he would say that either. It's that's just the way I feel. It's like I'm seeing this guy, knowing that the guy is dead. I'm seeing him die a little bit more in each phase of his career. That's what I think, and it's difficult for me to watch Chris Farley movies these days because I think about that. In the same way, it's difficult for me to watch Robin Williams movies, knowing what a mess he was inside, and watching him exercise his demons for us. Just makes me feel, like not laughing. Because it's not as funny to me anymore as it was. I don't know. This is the first time anybody's asked me that question, so it's really coming off the top of my head, and I really do feel that way. I don't enjoy.
Clearly, it's coming off the top of your head. It's like a meandering river. It's like a river of dreams. But Groo, you mentioned what might have been for Chris Farley, so let me credit Wikipedia.org. Farley was originally cast as the voice of the title character in the film Shrek, recording some 85 or 95%, according to some sources, of the character's dialogue, but died just before recording was finished. The filmmakers felt continuing the film with Farley would be in bad taste, so Shrek's dialogue was re-recorded by former SNL That Weasel castmate Mike Myers. A story reel featuring a sample of Farley as Shrek was released in 2015. The original version of Shrek even looks more like Farley himself, and there is stuff on YouTube with Farley as the title voice of Shrek. So I said to you off camera or off a recording that really could have been possibly the game changer to kickstart Farley's career in that direction that you mentioned.
Yes, and it probably would have been, considering that it was pretty much the same script that Mike Myers was using. But I find that whole thing to be bullshit. I remember this. They had enough of the movie to release, but they wanted a franchise. They knew they had a hit on their hands, so they knew that in order to get a franchise, they were going to have to replace Farley, and that's what they did. So I find bad taste, bullshit, money, truth. And that's fine. You know what? That's fine. But at least say what it is. And they didn't have the balls to do that. So they knew that with Eddie Murphy, they had a hit. They knew that his donkey was going to drive that into the stratosphere. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. But I think as far as what might have been, I think eventually. I
got some other stuff.
Okay, go.
He's got some other stuff.
Go.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you. Thank you. At the time of his death, Farley had been in talks to co-star with Vince Vaughn in The Gelfin and to star in a biographical about comedian Fatty Arbuckle to be written by David Mamet.
That would have been the one. That would have been what I was talking about.
Jim Carrey's role in the 1996 film The Cable Guy was originally intended for Farley, but scheduling conflicts forced him to decline. Farley was also offered the role of Ishmael. This might not have been a game changer, but a funny one, eventually played by Randy Quaid in the movie Kingpin, though he was forced by Paramount to turn it down to honor his commitment to star in Black Sheep. Farley was slated to appear in a third Ghostbusters film, which at the time was intended to be about a new trio of Ghostbusters taking on overpopulation in hell. Farley had been in talks for the lead in an adaptation of the novel A Confederacy of Dunces. As you talked about earlier, but I did find it, Farley even expressed interest in portraying Atuk, an adaptation of the novel The Incomparable Atuk. Both of these shelved projects, along with the Arbuckle biopic, have been alleged to be cursed, as Farley, John Belushi, and John Candy were each attached to all three roles.
And Sam Kinison.
I don't have that one, but okay, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
And all three died before any of the films entered production. We talked about I was intrigued to maybe what a Shrek may have done to Farley's career. I mean, the other stuff sounds interesting, maybe not as much. Groo, any, these sort of projects that may have been on Farley's slate, what might have been for Chris Farley?
If he had done the Arbuckle thing, that could have been that movie that I was talking about that really propels him to a new level of respect. The other ones would have worked against him. I don't know much about Atuk, but the other ones you described, him as Ishmael, he would have turned it into more shtick. Because he would have been encouraged to do it, not because he probably would have wanted to do something different with it, but they would have said, "No, do that thing. What you do, break the urinal instead of just sitting it."
The Ishmael character was slapsticky and silly to begin with. It
yes,
really
but Randy Quaid showed the kind of restraint in it that it needed. They would have turned it into a Farley vehicle. Like Black Sheep, it would have been. It would. I don't think it would have worked. That Fatty Arbuckle story, because that is not. That could have been one of those very funny, but also very tragic kind of stories that Farley's talents were worthy of. I would have loved to have seen him do that. That should have been his next move. But what might have been.
Okay, well,
what was the other one that you said? What was the other thing that he was slated for? No, I'm asking. I forgot.
I love how you always do this. I'm about ready to vote.
Just tell me.
He had third Ghostbusters, Cable Guy.
Yeah, let me. All right, Cable Guy. What do you think about what he would have done? See, I agree.
Jim Carrey was ace in that role, and actually, I think Cable Guy is a movie that's aged really well. It wasn't a hit, a massive hit at the time, but there's just a sardonicism. There's just a real black comedy undertone to Carrey's performance that I love about it.
Yeah, and Chris Farley,
Matthew Broderick is just the good old nature. I mean, I like the way it was cast.
Yeah, and Chris Farley was not dark comedy.
Well, there was a darkness to him, but certainly I like Jim Carrey in that role.
Yeah,
can't really see.
I remember hearing about the proposed Fatty Arbuckle story, and I remember thinking before he died how great how perfect that would be for him. But was not to be.
Well, Groo,
maybe I'll do it.
Let's try again in 3, 2, 1. Groo, what is Chris Farley's legacy? August 26, 2005, Chris Farley was posthumously awarded the 2,289th star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's had an authorized biography written about him called The Chris Farley Show, written by his brother Tom Jr. and Tanner Colby. He has been written in a song called Purple Stain from the Red Hot Chili Peppers' 1999 album Californication. He's had several television documentaries. 2018, Adam Sandler wrote and performed an emotional tribute song dedicated to Farley in his 2018 Netflix stand-up special, Adam Sandler, 100% Fresh. Netflix released this performance on YouTube later that year to commemorate the 21st anniversary of Farley's death. Sandler later played the song live on an episode of Saturday Night Live that he hosted on May 4th, 2019. So, always a complicated question, Groo. His SNL stuff was absolutely brilliant to me. His filmography, while his performances may be memorable, was very uneven. Tommy Boy, as we said earlier, but my thoughts was the most indicative of the quality work that he could do. The sweet soul, who was just a good-natured buffoon. So in the end, Groo, what is the legacy for Chris Farley?
Unfortunately, it's not what it should be. And the reason is because the generation that really controls everything right now doesn't even know who he is. They were all born after he died. He died in 1997, correct? 97 or 98?
Yes, 97.
97. You know, they don't even know who he is. We had the luxury of, even though John Belushi died before I started watching any of that stuff, it was soon enough after that where I discovered John Belushi and realized what a genius he was. But these, the people coming up today, they're not going to see that, and they don't even know who he is. They haven't seen Tommy Boy, and that's ultimately the legacy is going to die with our generation because he belonged to us, and he's kind of stuck in that generation. He hasn't transcended the way, I wish he would have, because he didn't have that. Even though we love Tommy Boy is no Animal House, and the generation today, they all know Animal House, so they know Belushi. But, Chris Farley was never quite able to get there. And that's why his legacy is not going to be what it deserves to be, unfortunately. That's what I think. What do you think?
It's hard for me to say because I don't know this generation. I think a lot of what you said is true. They don't know of him. I think kind of what I put on my notes. I think he'll be known as a guy taken way too soon, who could have perfected sort of that sweet-natured buffoon who fumbles and has some penchant for physical, comedy, but ultimately is good-natured and you're rooting for him. What I wanted to ask you was a couple of other things. Do you feel like if it was kept intact, could Spade and Farley have been some kind of new era Laurel and Hardy, or I don't know if Laurel Hardy is a good comparison, but they did what's unquestionable is sort of their rapport on screen through SNL and in the movies. Could they have done something movie-wise?
See, I don't think so. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why I don't think so, because I don't give them the credit that most people do. I don't think they had much chemistry, like in the movies.
Come on.
Like, wait a second. Okay. Tommy Boy is Farley's movie. It's not Chris Farley and David Spade. Not to me. Black Sheep, they tried to make it Chris Farley and David Spade. Didn't work. Tommy Boy is all Farley. And I didn't think that I didn't think they bounced off each other very well.
The whole movie was Farley bouncing off Spade.
I found Farley's funniest stuff were him on his own, or him, doing certain things. I think Farley could have worked with anybody. He was too larger than life to really pin him down to, have like a pairing like that. I don't know. Maybe I need to rewatch. I haven't seen anything that they've done in a very long time for reasons that I've already talked about. So maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. But I don't see them as a Belushi and Aykroyd. I don't see them as, I don't know, who else is there? Harold Ramis and Bill Murray. I don't see them as people like that. And I'd love to say different, but I just don't see it. Chris Farley and David Spade has perfected his brand of comedy so well in many of the things that he has done since.
They're not very good. It's not very good.
I don't know. He's not a movie guy. He's a TV guy. And David Spade, on the TV shows that he's been on that I've seen, he steals every single one of them. And he's good at it. And it's a very different kind of character that he brings to his roles that he did when he was with Farley. I think this is more his niche than the straight man to Farley's clown. So that's why I don't think it would have been on that level. But look, that's just my opinion.
Okay, well, Groo, before we wrap it up, we've been approaching 3 hours here, so let's get to it. Final thoughts or anything on the podcast? Final thoughts on Mr. Chris Farley?
Yes, everything you said, hilarious, taken too soon. We probably did not see the best of what he could have brought. He's a heartbreaking story for people like us. He really belonged to us. We saw, I don't know. He's just thinking about what could have been. It's very difficult to say anything else because it's so goddamn tragic. And that feeling of guilt is real. He suffered for our enjoyment. I guess you could
You're
say
really
that.
Getting old.
I guess you could say that. Is it not true? Is it not true?
I'm not buying into that.
All right,
I'm not buying into
all right.
that.
That's how I. That's how I feel.
Are you inferring the fan has some kind of guilt because Farley ultimately played off of his faux pas and his personal demons? I mean, I'm not going to accept that.
because that seems to be what people kept wanting from him, and while it lined his pockets and made him the most popular guy in the room, it obviously did not do very well for his mental state of being.
I mean, here would be the comparison. Do you feel bad when you see that Hulk Hogan has had 14, 15 spinal surgeries, and then you go, well, I watched him and I cheered him on for all those years, and he went through that pain and anguish in his body? I mean, everybody makes a choice. And I don't want to. Hold on, let me finish my thought, please. I don't want to sound cold-hearted, but I don't feel guilt over Chris Farley's death because I laughed at SNL or Tommy Boy or Black Sheep when he falls down the mountain. I mean, I don't know.
That's a very fair analogy, and I guess the answer would be no, and only because wrestlers like Hulk Hogan and people like they don't let us really see much of that pain. They might talk about it every now and then, but when they get up there, they're obviously still want to be there. Like Hulk Hogan has more money than anybody in the world, and yet he still loves to get into that ring and entertain people. That's where he's happiest. So maybe, I don't know. It's a great question, and it definitely pokes holes in my theory, but that's just how I feel about Chris Farley.
Okay, I respect that. Well, I'm
trying to think of anybody else who I would put into that category. I really can't.
All right, let's try again. Speaking of wrestling, Groo, next week it'll be our favorite wrestling angles and storylines of all time. The ones that made us truly excited for the upcoming matches, whether it ended up on a Raw or SmackDown, WrestleMania, or even Georgia Championship Wrestling. It's going to be Moody and Groo's favorite pro wrestling angles. It could have been a night or it could have been over a period of time. Groo, don't give us any info on the angles, but any thoughts on just shooting the breeze on our favorite wrestling angles and storylines of all time?
Yes, I seriously can't wait to see what you bring to the table, and I can't wait for the arguments that we're going to have. We're definitely gonna fight. We're definitely gonna virtually fight because I have no idea where you're going. You probably have a good idea.
I'll tell you, I've already written in a notebook maybe 2 or 3 times, like my top 10 and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 outliers.
Me too.
I even went on the network to watch 1 or 2 small things. I haven't really prepared, but we'll talk during the week and sort of map out how we're going to present it. But it'll be interesting, and I know where you're leading to. I know exactly what you're leading to, and I think that's what's going to be interesting. That's what makes you, and me.
Yeah, my prediction for you is that you will have a much broader base of. You will cover a lot of different eras of wrestling. That's what I think. I looked at my list, at least as it exists at the moment, and I see that I'm stuck in a certain time period, with a couple of exceptions.
I'll let out one spoiler. My number one angle of all time is the Kane Chris Jericho spill coffee on his chest into a blood feud.
Yes.
That's a joke.
Mine is Big Show's father being dragged around at his funeral by Big Boss Man.
It actually did give us a couple of laughs. It was like
Laughs.
a Farley movie.
Yeah,
There was a lot of slapping.
now I feel guilty.
All right, Andrew. You want to take us out of here? It's been a pleasure.
Yes, the pleasure, as always, is all yours. But yes, I'm really excited about next week's. I'm really looking forward to that. Until then, we got to stay safe, stay inside. I don't know where the hell you're going, but wherever it is, please be careful.
I'm going to go outside with Marie to breathe in the fresh COVID-19 air.
Yes, I should do that. I should do that too. I feel like I'm in the mood for Steak-'em tonight. Maybe I'll go to Publix.
There you go. Go get 'em.
But yes, so we'll see you next week. And until then, 3, 2, 1. Rip 'em.
Wash your hands. Quack, quack.